about healthy feet development today, and it's recently come to my attention that I pay a lot of attention to the healthy development of my child when it comes to things like dental care and eyesight and hearing, and we as parents tend to go to the professionals for these matters and medical professionals, and when it comes to the development of our children's feet that are going to serve them for life, we don't tend to even give a second thought to these things, to the medical matters. And I found myself standing in a shop when my child was just learning to walk, and thoughts going through my mind like affordability and current trends, and I realized like surely there should be more things I've got to consider. And that brought me to a deep passion for healthy feet development in my research, and I've brought my husband along to speak to some of the professionals because he's not entirely as convinced as I am. So here we are today. I'm Letitia Corder from Poppet Patch. This is my husband, the Poppet dad, Ian Corder. We're with Dr. Rebecca Berry from Linden Chiropractic and Adrian Dunn from Green Steps Footwear. So let's ask the professionals some of our questions.
I noticed you touched my shoulder when you said the professionals. I suppose, let me put this into context, because my bias with regard to being a bit skeptical with shoes goes back probably to my childhood. I'm one of four siblings, and it was quite standard to pass down shoes from child to child. In actual fact, there was a pair of rugby boots that served my three older brothers, myself, my oldest son, my oldest nephew, and then my youngest son, the same boots. And I was actually quite cross when the oldest son, the youngest son was wearing them and the boots came apart. Probably 45 years later after their initial purchase. So we grew up certainly where shoes had to be serviceable, not from and it was a grudge purchase, I've got to be honest. So I've got that bias that I come along with. So I'm glad we are here with the professionals. So this so-called correct shoe for the correct stage of a child's development, what's it all about, Rebecca?
Well, I think it's all relative to think about further about the formative years of your child's development. So essentially between the first 10 and 24 months, our kids are just going to be crawling around and experiencing nature and experiencing the environment around them. So in this essence, it's important to have a shoe that's going to be soft and something that would similarly present something like a sock. There's space for their foot to move. There's no really hard materials that are going to restrict any movement. Because remember, in this stage, our nervous system is still developing. So we've got our sensory and our motor systems that develop just by the sensation of touch. So we know the difference between holding a Lego and standing on a Lego, and so do they. They will understand the difference of holding sand and feeling sand with their feet. So it's really important to let them experience textures and feelings and all of these sensations. But as the nervous system develops, we start to develop something that's very important, the balance. And this is where balance comes in the structure or in the support, in the importance of the support in the feet. And essentially, as we really developing, we don't need any arch support, at least until our feet are fully developed, which ranges between the ages of 13 and 18 years. Prior to this, all we really need is just space. The most important is going to be to actually support the back of the foot, because this is where a lot of the shifting of the weight comes from, is that's that center of gravity. So if we look right up there, that's where it's going to shift. So if we cut that support by the heel and support it from there, it's just going to allow that foot to move naturally, and that's actually what we want. Natural is good. So we want products that are going to allow the child's feet to move naturally, while also protecting them from the environment. You don't want scratches and injuries and all of these things that are going to bring about a whole different...
Okay, well, you mentioned the sensory and the touch and that kind of thing. So it's important for our kids, for us to know as parents, when kids need to be in socks, when they need to be in shoes, and when they need to actually be barefoot and when they don't need a shoe. So for me, I'm still trying to determine, to know the signs of how do we know, Adrienne, when kids can be barefoot, when do they need a shoe and a sock and those kind of things? Can you give us some guidance on that?
Certainly. So as soon as the kids start walking, they need to experience barefoot time as much as possible. So in a protected environment or in a trusted environment like your home or your garden, let them go outside barefoot and experience the different terrain. But as soon as you go outside your trusted environment, you should be protecting their feet. So like a first walker from the Richter shoes, they are very flexible, and that's important for them to develop their gait pattern. The shoe is also designed in a way that the rubber insole is anti-slip, so they can't slip on any slippery surface, but also gives them the flexibility to walk and to do this movement as they're going and experiencing the different terrain.
So if the baby had to be walking on stones and gravel and that kind of thing, you would still get some sort of sensory stimulation through here to the nervous system.
Exactly. Which is very important when they start walking.
Yes. And we actually term that proprioception. So that's just that ability to start sensing. You have your proprioception, your fingers and your toes and all of that. And proprioception is the basis essentially for balance, which is exactly where we're then going to form as our child starts walking and running and playing and then getting involved in all their various activities.
Okay. And how does the foot, our feet, relate to our posture, our alignment? I mean, that song about the hip bone is connected to all the other bones. It's like, how do our feet actually carry the support of our whole body? How can I understand that a little bit better?
Well, I mean, we can connect it to anything. If we look at the structure of a building, the most important aspect of that building is the base. It's exactly where it comes from. Our feet are our base, and everything will fall on there like a domino effect. I don't know if any of you have seen that beautiful, it's an artwork where an artist actually put a book and stacked bricks on top. And he did a massive piece, and you can actually see just from one book, and you take a really drawn back view, and you can see that entire brick formation lifts just because of that one book. The exact same thing happens with our feet. Now that's the most important basis, and everything follows on from there. But not only that, we're constantly on our feet, constantly. Even when we're sitting and our feet are pressed on the floor, there's to a degree a certain type of pressure, obviously depending on your height and how long your legs are, but we always use them. It influences our ankle movements, our knee movements, our hip movements, which is then going to follow suit to our lower back, our mid back, and then eventually our neck. And if we don't monitor these things carefully, and things like don't allow your children to share shoes amongst one another, because everyone is going to have. Yes, I'm very sorry. I'm sure it was a great pair of boots, and perhaps don't frame them somewhere to keep them, but do not put them on anyone else's feet, please. So as soon as we start looking at that, because everyone is going to have a completely different biomechanical process that their body is following. Everyone's genetics, environment, all of that plays a very important role, and we do miss it. We miss it completely. And yes, even though a child's arch will only really you'll only really see the full development or lack of development between the ages of 13 and 18, it's still important to make sure that their development up until that stage has been cared for and has been monitored. Because like you say, we're so quick to go, they'll grow into being able to read the board, as opposed to not taking them for an eye test. We need to do it. We need to be more actively involved in prevention, because it is better than cure.
So using that building analogy, that the base or the structure, the foundation, really determines everything thereafter. I can understand now why my one brother's probably a good foot taller than me. that base may have been suitable for him, that base being the shoe, but perhaps it wasn't for me or my kids or what have you. So
exactly,
it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, as much as we see that posture in the frame of our body, we have a posture of our feet as well. And as soon as that posture is going to be let go to a degree, so I mean, you often hear about flat feet.
Yeah.
I think everyone's biggest concern is my child's got flat feet. It's fine. Let them have their flat feet up until the age that we know, is it still normal to have the flat feet or not? And like I say, that's only going to occur around the time that they start reaching skeletal maturity. And then from there we can really look at the effect. But as soon as you have a rolling in of the feet, the knee's going to roll in, the hip's going to roll in, and that's just going to have a constant effect. So if you naturally don't have a flat foot, but your brother did, then his shoes would have been worn in for that, and now you are doing the complete opposite.
So could you then actually, by having shoes that are worn to the left, could you then be actually like manufacturing or making a condition like knock knees a bit worse or something like that?
Look, I think it would depend on the length of time that the shoe has been worn, the stability of the shoe, so the actual shoe itself. So I mean, if we look at the shoes over here, it's really important that shoes have got a nice support at the back, as you said. And the last thing we want, I mean, flip-flops are great and they're cute and everyone loves them, and you know, you get nice.
But we say they should only wear it by the pool.
Yes.
But
not on a daily basis.
Exactly, and that's exactly where the fit for purpose comes in. It's not, the purpose is not to wear a slop when you go out to the mall, because all the kid's going to be trying to do while they're trying to keep up with you is to hold that shoe, which is going to change the posture of their feet and then indirectly actually change the posture of the rest of their body.
Okay, but it's very common in South African culture that we put kids in flip-flops all day long. When we go to the mall, we go to friends, we go to Bra, wherever, because it's the climate. And I'm sure in a lot of other countries we do the same. So what is the alternative to kids wearing flip-flops all day long?
So I find that kids love wearing those flip-flops because their feet sweat quite a lot. I mean, even more than our feet. And they feel comfortable because, you know, the air flow and all sorts in the flip-flop. But like Rebecca mentioned, that kind of shoes don't have the right structure to keep their feet straight and to align their posture accordingly. We recommend that kids should rather wear materials or shoes that made of breathable materials, so like leather or a canvas shoes, because the leather has the feature of absorbing the perspiration, and then when you leave it overnight or for a day, it dries out, so you can put it back on their feet and they will feel comfortable. Because even when their feet sweat and they wear these synthetic or plastic shoes, they will feel very unbalanced because their feet slips.
Right, yeah.
So what they will start doing is that they try to grip onto the shoe. And if they constantly walk like that every day, day and out, their feet will ossify into this posture.
So
structure.
Would a sandal, something like this, would this be a good alternative to a slop or flip-flop?
Definitely.
I mean, it's open, it's breathability,
it's open,
made with a material
and
that
it's
is
also made of genuine leather, so the leather will help them absorb the perspiration, and it has the heel cup at the back, which keeps especially for the toddlers, it's an important structure of the foot because it's keep their feet straight.
And how important is this this cushioned sole? I know that like a slop does have it, but it can either be nothing. The density of that material can either be just about nothing or really, really firm, almost like wood. Whereas this has got a real nice, comfortable.
It gives them more comfort, and you know, when they're wearing their shoes the whole day, it gives them more comfortable feel to it. They can run they can do all sorts of
Molds to
activities
it.
because their feet doesn't get tired out.
I think the main difference I pick up here between this and a flip-flop is obviously the heel support. Because, I mean, it's
going to stay on. You're not going to be
It's
crunching
going
up
to
your-
stay on with this kind of thing, so you're not going to have that crunching kind of vibe that they go through. But this support is the main difference for me, I guess.
Yeah. So orthopedics and our manufacturer also believe that the minimum back support they should have is around 4 centimeter, and you will see that this sandal does have that at the back. This is at least 4 centimeter. This is good enough for them to keep their feet straight.
Okay.
And like I said, yes, it's still open, but the fastening is another key structure of the shoe, especially for the toddler age or even for older kids. It's just to keep the shoe on their feet, so they don't feel also that their feet moves to the front and back all the time as they walk.
And another important thing to add is that, so the real problem that I find with slops is that you're constantly trying to grip that lace piece between the toes. And one of the most important things that we all forget is that the big toe, it's vital for the big toe to have space to move. The big toe is actually directly involved in the arch of the foot and the formation of the arch of the foot. So if we restrict the movement of the big toe just from being able to bend up and down comfortably, or now it's having to grip onto something just to keep the foot stable, then we're going to start seeing more and more prevalence in these foot issues developing. That back support, comfortable, breathable, what more do you want?
Yeah, and just imagine if the shoe doesn't have the right features to keep it on their feet. They love, especially the younger kids, they love jumping up and down the jungle gym. Imagine the pressure that they have when they jump off the jungle gym onto, let's say, a tiled surface or even on grass surface that's still hard on their knees and on their hip. So it's important that you look for shoes that has some sort of structure in their sole. Like these shoes have some shock absorption, so when they jump, it keeps it protects their knees and hips as well. We will not see the effect of it now, but later on,
yes,
certainly.
it's all about the later on in life, and sure, there's still a place for these cute little flip flops, you know. But for me, so definitely something that I've learned is that they're for the swimming area and for the beach and around the pool. And the flip flop, if I look at it now, I can see it differently because it's like for the wet area, right? It's for wet areas. So if I'm around jungle gyms and grass areas and whatever, I think I can see
it's not fit for purpose.
It's not a fit for purpose shoe. Like if I'm going to play, I have fit for purpose shoes in my cupboard. If I'm playing squash, I have shoes for impact. If I'm going out to a gala dinner, I've got high heels.
Yeah.
If I've got...
And you're hitting the right points there because it's all about the structure and as to what kind of activities you're using your shoes for. Like kids, on a daily basis, you need something for them that is comfortable and keeps their feet dry, or at least it doesn't enhance the sweatiness in the shoe. So with the trainers, you also need the functionality to keep their feet dry.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, and then how important is it for... something happened to me where I had my child's feet measured properly. I was 100% certain she was wearing the right shoe size, and because I want to get shoes that last for the whole season. I don't want to buy too many pairs of shoes. And then my child's teacher said to me, her shoes are too small. And then I disagreed and I said, no, they can't be too small. Their feet were measured and all of this, and then when I measured them again, I was like, oh, if the teacher is right, her feet are too small, I mean her shoes are too small, so, you know, apart from the fact that it was slightly embarrassing, and it could have potentially impacted her growth negatively. I mean, how do we know how often to measure our children's feet? How important is it to measure our children's feet? And how do we go through the growth stages of that kind of thing? And how important is it that the shoe fits properly?
Right, so I mean, I generally give, I'm not sure on if you guys have a separate measurement, but I give a very easy way just to measure feet. Okay. Up until about the age of 2, every 2 months. From 3 to 6, every 3 months, you recheck. Also, it's important we don't remember socks. Yeah. Are the socks too small? What is that? How is our kids' feet feeling if the socks are all restricted and tight? So their shoes have got a lot of space and everything feels great, but they actually can't even move within the socks.
For sure.
Oh wow.
So that's something else we need to always
never thought
consider.
about this, looking at the size of the socks.
Yeah, I don't know if you
or if socks are too big.
Yeah.
Can also be.
Yeah, I mean, that's just more irritating.
Even I have felt if I'm wearing socks that are too big, it gives movement in my shoes.
And I think that goes back to how feet, to a large extent, are non entity. We don't take them seriously enough. I mean, if our baby had a baby grower that was tight, you would change it straight away. One, you know it wouldn't look cool, and two, it's not very nice. You know, whatever it might be. The hairs, but the feet, you know, again, it took us, and embarrassingly so, it took a teacher to say, hey guys, you know, I don't think yet we were convinced they were measured and all that, but you know, going back, we probably measured them 3 or 4 months prior to that being told, and yeah, kids.
And I've never given any thought to socks, and I don't think many people do, because I mean, our socks often have holes in, or they're
speak
small.
For yourself.
I know you speak for you.
Sibling socks.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I must tell you the story about our sibling socks.
And yarning socks.
Exactly. So even with socks, you need to look at the components of the socks, because if there are too much synthetic in the material, that also enhances the air perspiration.
Of course, yeah.
So the more pure
and bacteria
cotton
even, I suppose.
You go towards pure cotton, then obviously that can help them absorb the air surface. I always tell parents when they put closed shoes or shoes like this on their kids' feet, they should always put some cotton socks on their feet as well. That just helps to keep their feet dry in the shoes.
So how do I know which size for what shoe size for what foot size? How much growth as space for growth do I need to have?
So when we measure kids' feet, we have our size guide. Every manufacturer has different size guide because they use different laws or mold for their shoes. So when you go shop for your kids' shoes, always look at, okay, what is the recommended size? So when they measure the length of the foot, go by the recommended size guide that the manufacturer recommends. I always tell parents, take your kids with you when you go for shoe. Take your kids with you when you go for purchasing a new shoe for them, because you never know whether they grew 1 size or 2 size since the last you bought shoes for them.
And also, I mean, you know, a size 2, maybe that size in that shop or that manufacturer, and a size 2 will be something completely different at another. So, that's really important. You guys have got quite a cool measuring system. I know as a kid, you know, going into a shoe shop, and it didn't happen often, as I alluded to in the start, you know, there would be a really cool measuring
like a
system.
metal one.
Yeah, and it would be, I mean, it was a big deal to get a pair of shoes, certainly for me, and you know, you'd put your foot up on it, and the guy would come, and you know, I don't see those in shops anymore.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's very rare that shoe shops will use those kind of measurements. We use our child-friendly. I call it child-friendly because, yes, kids are not used to measuring their feet. So when they see all these metal devices, they get a bit scared and they become resistant. And it's so imperative for fitting shoes on their feet that we measure the foot, because a good shoe fit is important for supporting their healthy feet development as well. So we usually ask parents to bring their kids along, so we can measure their feet before they buy any shoes. It's a quick exercise. All they need to do is stand on this little template. Then we measure the length, we go by the size, and then we recommend parents what shoe size they should go by.
And there needs to be a little bit of give, doesn't it? I mean, there needs to be a centimetre or two.
Our manufacturer gives 12 to 50 millimeter on top of the longest toe to grow into the shoe. That can give you quite a good shoe wear for the kids. So you will see that when you start measuring their feet regularly, like Rebecca said, we also say under 3, measure their feet every 2 months. And then after 3, because their feet grows slow down a bit, you can measure every 3 months.
And does that accommodate for individual growth spurts? Because kids are so different. I mean, I always just know that to say, you know, these standard things like every 2 months for kids younger than 3 and every so often for kids that age, I'm always wary of such kind of generalizations because kids are so individual. So does that bracket accommodate for those things?
It does. It does. But yes, you're right. Kids can go through growth spurts. So when you see that they are a bit taller than they were 2-3 months ago, that's definitely impact their feet as well. But it doesn't happen all the time. Okay. It happens maybe once or twice a year, but it's not as fast or fast grow as we sometimes believe.
Okay.
And sort of anatomically and biomechanically speaking, the average, obviously there's always going to be kids that fall in and out of the scope of average, but generally within the first 2 years, growth occurs at about 2 centimeters per year. And from about 3 to 6 years, growth is about 1.5 centimeters per year. And then from 6 onwards, it's about 1 centimeter a year. And obviously, like I said, your genetics and everything is going to impact that. But that's quite a safe number to then think about. So if you think, oh goodness, I haven't really checked my kids' shoes in the last 4 or 5 months, best we have a look because guaranteed we're at least going to have 1 centimeter growth by then.
So then if I buy the correct size, then the shoe can last for the season, basically. And also because of the durability, of course.
It may not be a bad idea, you know, when we take our kids to the clinic, they weigh them, they measure the length, the head. You know, to add feet,
it should be standard. It should be standard in kids' clinics for them.
Especially because of the importance. I mean, when you were talking about the importance of foot development, it just resembled the statistic that I recently read in an article that apparently we take 100,000 miles in our lifetime. Wow. So that's about going around the world 4 times. Just imagine how important our feet are.
Wow,
incredible.
That is incredible. One can actually, when you take the insole out, you can see here, I mean, this is not the length of her toes, but it's where she has grown. So when I've got that 12 to 15 millimeters space for her to grow, I can actually see here how she is growing into the shoe. And that's also for me personally, it's another way of looking at the size now that I've learned through my child's teacher that her
that's the first
didn't have the
first positive outcome I've seen of her having dirty feet.
Yeah. But that's a nice feature of toddler shoes as well, that all the insoles come out, so you can either replace it with your orthopedic soles if it's recommended, or you can just keep an eye on their foot growth if you are not able to go to the shop regularly with them to measure their feet.
Yes. Okay, so basically what I take from this is what we as parents can do to best possible in the best possible way, help our children develop their feet properly is by establishing a few things. For me, certainly the first thing to do is determine the correct shoe size, then determining whether my child actually needs a shoe for the particular activity, whether she can be barefoot, in socks or in shoes, so whether it's a shoe or no shoe, and then having the shoe fit for purpose. Where are we going? Is she going to be jumping on jungle gyms? Is she going to be playing at a friend's house where the surfaces are even and smooth? What kind of shoe does she need? And then lastly, are the shoes that I'm dressing her in supporting healthy feet development with specifications like 4 centimeters heel support and that kind of thing. So I just want to thank you guys today. Thanks very much, Ian. Thanks, Dr. Rebecca Berry. She's at Linden Chiropractic. Thank you, Adrienne. You can find more on this topic on the blog on www.poppetpatch.com and also on our social pages. It's at Poppet Patch on Instagram and Facebook. Dr. Rebecca Berry is from Linden Chiropractic and Adrienne Dunn is from Green Steps on www.greensteps.co.za.